The views and opinions expressed on the Craig L. Hayes Show are not necessarily those of Westgate Resorts ownership or management. And now, on with the show.
This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We're here with Don Toto on episode number 2, continuing his interview and his stories from SHOWBIZ and his past. And we left off, we were talking about his time in Vietnam, and we're going to move to his working at the Pittsburgh Playhouse. So what do you have to say about that, Don? What were you doing there?
Well, that was a regional theater that was starting an Actors Equity professional season with major musicals and a union IA crew, and they had union lighting designers, and I was going to be an assistant carpenter, and was asked if I could do the lighting for the children's theater, where they would have plays on Saturdays for the little ones. And so I would build scenery and work with the union crew during the week, and then do some lighting on Saturday. So it was a very immersive type of experience, and one that I relished and learned a great deal from, because I was able to become friends with and actually go to downtown Pittsburgh and work some of the road shows that would come into the professional theaters that they had there. As I was working there, though, I found my interest in theater and learning more about this business increasing. And I came to another decision, whether to attend a graduate school in Pennsylvania or take a position as a stage manager at that theater. And I decided that since I had had such a positive experience with my undergraduate university, which was an urban school, that going to a university in Pennsylvania, partially subsidized by the GI Bill, which I had earned by serving, was a good idea. And so I decided to do that. I applied to Penn State University, to their graduate school, and went there for an interview, and they offered me a graduate assistantship, which meant a stipend, no fees, no charges, and in return, I did have to participate not only in, of course, the class workload, but to have positions of importance in the plays and musicals that they would put on. Because they had an extensive theater department with several theaters, and it was a very busy. They needed the grad students to design and build and operate, and they used the undergraduate students to learn different things about it, but they did not have the experience, really, that some of us had. So I accepted that position, and so attended classes during the day, worked on building shows in the afternoon, and then a lot of times we would do shows in the evening. So it was a long day and multifaceted, and so I did that. That was a 3-year program, and so I did different types of jobs. I worked in the carpentry shop. I went on tour with little shows throughout Pennsylvania to the campuses, and then I was an assistant to the head of lighting for my final year. That's when I decided that where I was going to go following graduation from Penn State. And someone, a very good close friend of mine who was attending Penn State, and we still are close friends, said, you should think about Las Vegas. I had been thinking about the movie studios in LA, but since Las Vegas was along the way, on my drive across the country, I decided to stay and see what Las Vegas was all about, and immediately got signed in with the union and started taking calls around town at the different shows. So now we're in 1975, I think it is, to remember right.
75 Las Vegas looks a little different than it does today.
It does.
That's for sure.
Yep, there were open fields, there were a lot of gas stations and hotels that are no longer here.
And a lot of space between the hotels.
Yes, a lot of open spaces.
A lot of desert vacant lots and such. So I imagine the guy you're talking was Tim, your
Tim
buddy
O'Brien,
Tim. Yeah,
yes.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Yes, because I seem to remember you talking about, years back, that you told me that you and him went to Penn
College.
State and you went through the program together and you both came out here basically. So cool, man. I know both of you, so that's good.
Yeah, it was a Master of Fine Arts program. It was 3 years. It was different from a Master of Arts. We did have, an extensive experience with many of our professors were former IA union stagehands or scenic artist, lighting designers or set designers. And so the concept of getting experience by working in the industry was something that was impressed upon me. If you wanted to really learn the business, you needed to work in it before you became an instructor or a professor, which was largely what my program at Penn State was intended to do. So I chose not to do that, but to gain experience. And so I took calls around Las Vegas for a while, at different hotels until I landed at the Dunes Hotel.
Now, when you were back at the Pittsburgh Playhouse, were you a part of the union? You were a union?
No.
Okay, you were
No.
just.
When
So-
I got to Penn State University, there was a mixed local at Penn State, mostly movie projectionists. And the university was going to build a large theater auditorium. And they were going to bring in professional companies and shows. And so the local there wanted to bring in some new people who were experienced in live theater.
Yeah, it's not something you'd want to turn over to a bunch of college kids if you're going to do some serious like ballet shows and all these big, touring shows.
Touring shows.
You want to have at least a nucleus of legit stagehands that can, draw from the local, labor pool of students that are in the classes to help. But obviously, you want that nucleus, I would think.
And we were a little more advanced than basic undergraduate students. We had summer stock experience. I had the experiences in Boston and in Pittsburgh to draw upon. And so we were invited to join the IATSE local of 636 in Pennsylvania, which I did do, and before I came to Las Vegas. So we did shows, we did load-ins, we did many things that maybe I still sort of do, although I am retired now.
A little bit of here and there. And
Here and there.
so basically what you did is you just pretty much transferred your membership from 636 over to 720 when you came driving through
Yes,
and stopping.
yes.
Okay.
Essentially, although I didn't do it formally, I worked for a year and a half or so before Local 720 invited me to become a member of this local.
Yeah, I forgot all about that. You had to be asked,
Sponsored or-
sponsored, the whole 9 yards. Yeah, that was things changed towards the 80s on that stuff. But yeah, I forgot all about that. You're right. So the dunes. I remember you talking about the dunes. You spent quite a bit of time there at the dunes.
I did. I got there in 1975, and there was a French review there called Casino de Paris, and they had many technical devices in the show on the stage. It was the most advanced stage that I had seen. I did take a couple of calls over at the MGM Grand and Hallelujah Hollywood, which was an even more advanced stage. And at the Flamingo, they had different, each showroom had a different stage setup, and the Stardust was involved, the Tropicana was involved with the.
Yeah, those were
quite a
the
bit of
days of the French
scenery.
reviews and the the big production reviews and stuff. Yeah, Hallelujah Hollywood. Let's see, Lido, Stardust, right?
Yep.
Tropicana had Follies.
Follies. The Follies Bergère, and
You guys had Casino de Paris. So
there were several others, Bal de Moulin Rouge, and many smaller lounge shows like
Yeah.
Air Touch of Vegas, and they were quite prevalent.
yeah, it was got Sin City because there was all these shows that were scantily dressed women in feathers and topless and stuff. So
The Dune show was slightly different in that it glorified the beauty of the showgirl, the female form in terms of costume and setting and elegance. So none of these shows were vulgar in really any way, and they were intricately choreographed by skilled directors and choreographers, and the costumes were very expensive, handmade, and the women that wore them were models and beautiful and able to walk around the stage, whether it be up and down stairs or out on platforms, and look elegant and beautiful while wearing
and carrying these huge costumes.
huge costumes.
People don't realize how big these costumes were. The headpieces and everything. These women may have been like 5'8", 5'9", or something like that, but with the headpieces and everything, they were like 8, 9 feet tall.
They were giant
Yeah,
because
it was
they had
unbelievable.
they had to be bigger than life in a way, but they were on the stage, and everyone had different costumes. Some people had the same. They were different types of costumes. My wife, for example, had a set of angel wings that she would wear over her shoulders, and they were, as you would think, gigantic wings made beautifully, but were very heavy and strained her shoulders and neck and back. And then you had to walk downstairs, many sets of stairs, not looking down, but looking at the audience, smiling, dancing back and forth, wearing high heel shoes. It was quite a difficult endeavor. and I was part of the crew that would help change the scenery. And so I did that for a number of years until that show, like many shows, they open and then they close, and something else moves in.
Yep. That is our story, basically. As I used to teach the class here at the hotel, when they have the new recruits, we'll call them, coming into Local 720, and I just basically tell them every show closes. Any show you do, it closes. Sometimes they last a week, sometimes a month, sometimes they run 35 years.
But eventually it's
They all
going
close.
to.
They all close. So you were mainly on the deck at the during this time. Didn't you do flyman or something too, or?
As the years went by,
Okay,
of course,
okay.
I stayed on the dunes as a houseman. And so I became head props, I became head flyman. I ran a spotlight for a number of years on Robert Goulet and Debbie Reynolds and some of the performers that we had there then. And until eventually, the last show, I was the head carpenter for the final couple of years that the Dunes was in existence before they sold it and then imploded it.
What was the last show?
The last show was a show called Wild Things. It was a combination of Bobby Barasini and his orangutans, and the magician Kirby Van Birch,
Oh, okay.
who did magical things and had animals, and Patrick Mays, a choreographer, producer from the Flamingo and other places around Las Vegas, had a review. So it was a combination show, and of course we had a comedian and some specialty acts that were in there. And that was the last show, and I think that was towards early 1992. So I stayed at the Dunes for many years, from 1975 until 92, hoping that they would rebuild the hotel, which eventually they did, but they blew up the old one.
Yeah, it's called the Bellagio, so
So, and I moved on from there.
So also while you were at the Dunes, and I try telling friends and people that I meet, stage hands basically don't do one job.
No,
No,
we don't.
we
You
don't.
can't really survive
No,
in the business, and it's too boring.
yeah. So we usually have a home base. Yours was the Dunes, but I know you would go do show changes.
Yes.
Show changes at, as I remember, it'd be like 2 in the morning, 2 in the morning, you'd go and do a show change at some hotel because whatever act was leaving, so it was time to go in there and take all their stuff out and start bringing in the next act. We all did that, and I know you did that too, because
Yes.
you just do your shows, walk across the street to Caesar's Palace, and go do a show change.
Well, the celebrity room at
MGM,
Bally's or MGM, or several others, the Desert Inn. There were quite a few hotels that would have acts that would only last 2 weeks, and they'd need a crew. They would send the show crew home to come back in at 8 in the morning, and they would make a call for other people to come in and work from 2 a.m. until 10:30 when the other crew would come in.
We all did that.
It was a long night.
It was a long night. It was just, but the stage hands will just do that. They, I don't know why we do it. We just go and we do it, because I think we enjoy the camaraderie, going and seeing people we haven't seen in a while at other places. We get sequestered in a place. Like if you just did the Dunes all the time, you'd walk out of there and not know who anybody was, and that's what I found. 'Cause I did a little bit of that myself. So during the time when you were at the Dunes, didn't you go work the Riviera? for a period of time? Was that somewhere else you were working and you did the Riviera? Because I know Tim O'Brien was over there.
Yes, he
And
was.
you popped in and did some work there too. So
And to enlarge my theatrical frame of reference, and because conventions were becoming a large part of Las Vegas, and since I had done a number of years in the showroom and other showrooms, I decided to work at a convention center occupation for a while, and so went over to the Riviera. My college friend offered me some work there at different times, and so I did do that for several months, but then I actually missed the live shows. I just had a propensity for live entertainment and not so much conventions, although I did do a Frank Sinatra New Year's Eve show in the Riviera Convention area, so we did have some entertainment, but mostly it was products and
yeah,
meetings.
to me, I don't enjoy or didn't enjoy doing conventions. I'll go do them for a few extra dollars. You know, if they say we need people because we're out of people, can you come over to Convention Center and be the head carpenter on, Warner Brothers convention, for a couple days? Yeah. And this is why you're working at the Riviera 6 nights a week. Yeah, I'll go over there and I'll help over there and I'll come back over, back and forth, back and forth. We all do that stuff. But I never enjoyed conventions.
No.
I like doing shows. The shows had just a certain vibe to them. That's what I like doing,
So I returned to the dunes for the last couple of years, but then the hotel closed, and I found myself looking around town for another position. I personally liked having a steady job. It helped with my family. I was married. I had 2 beautiful daughters, a beautiful wife who had been a performer in the Dunes show, and so that's how I sort of ended up at the Starlight Express. Was going to be opening at the Las Vegas Hilton, and it was going to be a high-tech show, a lot of action, an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, which appealed to my basic sense of theatrical musicals as opposed to Las Vegas reviews. And
Had you done any show changes and work here prior to coming over here and working on Starlight?
yes,
Okay.
quite a few times I would come in, the Everly Brothers, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Liberace, different show change, Wayne Newton. I would come here and do the show changes with the head carpenter then, who was Mickey Giebler.
Yeah. We probably worked because I did a lot of those.
Yeah.
Not realizing we had worked together. I was just trying to think. I'm thinking about it going, man, I used to do a lot of those shows too. When I was working at the Riv or wherever else, and come over and do show changes and stuff. And, with Mickey or with Dick Wood, who was the
Head Electric.
Head Electric at the time, So, no, or the audio guys, what was his? I can't remember his.
Steve James?
Steve Ripka.
Steve Ripka later.
Yeah.
Steve James?
Steve James was in the late 70s, early 80s, somewhere around in there. Yeah, he was the head audio.
Steve Ripka.
But Steve Ripka was after him, I believe, and yeah, that's way back when. That's 40 years ago.
So I decided to come over here and do the installation of Starlight Express, and it was a show that was intended to have many lighting instruments, lights beyond anyone's prior recollection. Hundreds and hundreds, a truss maybe as big as some of the large rock and roll shows that were touring, but this was going to be at the Las Vegas Hilton. There were 800 lights in the stage floor. There were There was a truss with hundreds of aircraft landing lights, LECOs, all the latest technical equipment. And so it appealed to me.
And moving lights.
And moving lights.
Yeah, very lights. Yeah.
Mirror lights were put in. A small package to accent back in that year of maybe 1993 or 4.
93, yeah. It's installed in the 93, yeah. Because I came here at 94. It had already been open for like 5 months or 6 months or something like that.
Yeah. And so I ran a spotlight on that show until eventually I started to operate the lighting boards that were in our booth. There were several of them, one for the moving lights, one for the conventional lights, and one for special effects. And then I would just have that variety of different positions in the hotel. And so on that show, and it lasted for several years, then it left. At that point, I was head electric and in charge of all the lighting, and I ended up staying for a number of years after that until Barry Manilow opened in 2005.
4 or 5, yeah. Yeah, and that was a thing unto itself. So yeah, basically, in just a minute here, we're going to take and end this episode, and then we're going to start another one in just a few minutes. But that's where I'd like to go, is talk about, going from Starlight Express to basically into Barry Manilow and causing, and I have to say, I'm the one that caused Don great stress in that time period going into Barry Manilow, because that's when he lost his amazing lighting truss system. Sorry, Don. Sorry.
I'm over it now.
But anyways, that's the end of episode 1, and end of episode 2, sorry. And we'll be right back with episode 3.
This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.
Yeah, I don't know how much to jump around
Oh, it's fine.
to get to the end.
No,
or-
this is what we're doing. We're just
Yeah.
talking about it. There's no set format on this other than